Hello everyone, I carry a skeleton, and today we're starting something special. Remedy Entertainment is a name most people in the gaming space recognize. Even if you don't recognize the company, you probably recognize their creative director's name, Sam Lake. They're behind one of the most iconic action games in gaming history, Max Payne. An icon of the industry, I've been interested in going through their games for a while now, especially since almost every single one is well liked. More on that, however, my interest was sparked hearing how their world is connected and the theories people make about them. It kind of reminded me of how Rockstar games are and how people connect them. And I'm just really a fan of that kind of stuff, especially in gaming. I love little Easter eggs and theorizing how things are connected. And Remedy is just one of those icons of the space who are so well known for their creativity and everything else that I've just never played any of their games somehow. So with that in mind, I'm going to start my way through the RemedyVerse. The original idea was one giant video, but that would just end up being way too long. I'm just going to talk about the games in order of how I play them. Each episode will be 2 to 3 games. There will also be an episode about alternate media related to the verse, such as Bright Falls, the web show, and the Alan Wake books and comics. And then a conclusion episode, kind of celebrating everything together and making a rating order of the games, in my opinion, and a tier list of RemedyVerse characters. In this first video, I'll be going over and giving my thoughts on Alan Wake, Quantum Break, and Alan Wake's American Nightmare. I'm just a curious skeleton. Let's get into it. When most people think of Remedy Studios, one of two franchises probably pop into their mind: Max Payne or Alan Wake. We'll get to Max in a later episode, but for now, we're going to talk about the first Alan Wake. The two are pretty intrinsically tied together though. Alan Wake being the idea Remedy came up with after Max Payne 2. They wanted a deeper narrative story, and a protagonist that was different from Max. Max was a cop, someone naturally fit for action, while Wake was a writer, thus someone who is dragged into a foreign setting and forced to fight. Alan Wake is also special because he reflects Remedy Studio themselves in a lot of ways. A writer known for stories about a detective who is now struggling with writing something new. So much of the game's identity started with them wanting to create some distance from Max Payne. It was originally supposed to be an open-world game to be different from Payne's linear structure. Gameplay was supposed to be more towards the survival approach, rather than the arcade shooter it ended up being, with the player having to collect resources during the day in order to survive the nights. This ended up falling through for numerous reasons. It made it hard to establish a story and narrative and to explain how gameplay tied in with the supernatural events. Then with Microsoft's involvement, it made the process even more complicated with Microsoft's suggestions for improvement. Lake himself has said it was a too many cooks in the kitchen type situation. This led to the team realizing that they needed to refocus on what the core elements of gameplay would be, leading to the Alan Wake we all know now. The two biggest inspirations of Alan Wake are fairly obvious: Twin Peaks and Stephen King. The town of Bright Falls is very reminiscent of Twin Peaks, a small, little quirky town with plenty of darkness brewing under its surface, alongside some lynching concepts such as the idea of the dark presence. The game starts off with a King quote, and part of Alan's personality is based on King, alongside the idea of a writer's work coming to life. I'm going to summarize the story of Alan Wake, so anyone has already played and just wants my thoughts, skip to this timestamp. The story of Alan Wake is fairly straightforward. It is broken down into episodes, similar to a TV show. Wake and his wife Alice take a small vacation to the town of Bright Falls. Before they go, Alan has a nightmare about shadowy figures trying to kill him. Once they get to Bright Falls, they go to the diner to get a key from Carl Stuckey to their cabin for the vacation. Stuckey, however, has been compromised, and Wake runs into an old lady instead, who gives him keys to his supposed cabin. This is not their original cabin, but a different one, in the center of the town's volcanic lake. Alan starts having visions of the old woman, and it's revealed this vacation is to help him get over his writer's block by having him see a famous psychologist in Brightfall, Dr. Emil Hartman. They get to their cabin, and Alan gets infuriated and goes outside, and hears Alice screaming from the cabin. But by the time he gets to her, she is getting dragged into the lake waters by a supernatural force. Alan dives into the lake after her, and blacks out. He has more visions of the old woman before waking up in his crashed car. There's no memories of how he got there. He makes his way to a distant gas station, and is attacked by shadowy figures on the way there. He fights them back with a flashlight, and has more encounters with the diving suit entity from his first dream. The entity also leaves behind pages from a manuscript by Wake titled Departure. Alan finds out events from the manuscript are coming true, and he has no memory of writing it. Shadow figures he has been fighting are the Taken, townsfolk that have been infected by a dark force. Alan kills the possessed Carl Stuckey and tries to alert Sheriff Breaker of his wife's disappearance. This is where Breaker informs Alan that there is no cabin on an island in Cauldron Lake that sunk in a volcanic eruption decades ago. The sheriff ends up taking Alan to the police station, and Alan's friend, Barry Wheeler, arrives in Bright Falls. At the police station, Alan gets a call from a man claiming to be Alice's kidnapper, who demands the pages from his mysterious manuscript Departure in exchange for her return. Hartman shows up to the station afterwards to invite Alan to stay at his psychiatric hospital. Alan punches him in response. He then meets up with the kidnapper at the national park nearby, where the kidnapper demands the manuscript and the two get into a fight. It ends with the kidnapper running off into the night. Alan and Barry then attempt to retrieve more pages, and they're pursued by FBI agent Robert Nightingale, who has read some of the manuscript pages. Alan leaves Barry and manages to escape Nightingale. He goes to meet the kidnapper again, this time with the pages, but finds him being tortured by the old woman from the beginning of the game. The kidnapper admits he never had Alice and just wanted the manuscript pages. A dark tornado appears and Alan is hurled into Cauldron Lake. Alan wakes up in the psychiatric hospital looking over the lake. He is now under the care of Hartman, who claims Wake had a psychiatric break caused by the drowning of his wife. He says all the supernatural phenomenon are just fabrications of Alan's imagination. He meets some of the other patients, including two old patients, the Anderson brothers, who are members of the band Old Gods of Asgard. They tell him to drink their special moonshine if he wants to learn the truth about his wife. Alan finds out that Hartman had hired the fake kidnapper in order to lure Alan, and he escapes as a dark presence attacks the hospital. Alan and Barry learn more about the town's dark presence. The entity has been trapped within the lake and is trying to escape by turning literature into reality. The first attempt was with a poet named Thomas Zane, who is the figure of light Alan has been seeing. It took the form of Zane's deceased spouse when Thomas tried to bring her back after she drowned. Zane resisted and used his writings to cause the eruption that sank the small island and cabin. Alan and Barry get drunk off the Anderson special moonshine, and Alan recalls the dark presence, forcing him to write the Departure manuscript by holding Alice hostage in the lake. The presence is trying to use it in order to finally escape. Even in his maddened and hypnotic state, Wake realizes this and starts writing in ways to escape and eventually defeat the presence. Alan and Barry get arrested by Nightingale, who takes him to the station. He's in a frantic state and increasingly hostile with Alan. The dark presence attacks and drags him away. And this is when you can find a manuscript page that he had describing this exact moment. Sheriff Breaker is now convinced of the truth and helps Alan and Barry. They make their way to Cynthia Weaver, a resident who lives in the power plant in town. She had known Thomas Zane and was the one who made preparations against the dark presence, with all the light sources and leaving the supply crates for Wake to find, alongside the warnings you could find painted on walls in different levels. She leads them to a well-lit room, which contains the clicker, a little switch from Alan's childhood that his mother gave him to help with his fear of the dark. Clicking it would drive the darkness away, and is what Alan wrote in his departure manuscript would defeat the darkness. The last manuscript page is with the clicker, describes Alan going to where the island and cabin used to be and clicking it. Alan fights his way back to the lake alone. When he arrives, the dark presence attempts to trick him with visions, but he drives it away with the clicker. He ends up in the dark place, a place where thoughts and ideas become reality. He finally finds the dark presence and defeats it with the clicker, but realizes he must maintain balance in the story. He does this by freeing Alice and being stranded in the dark place himself in her stead. He also meets another version of himself called Mr. Scratch, that Zane says will take his place while he's gone. Alan ends the game with one final line: "It's not a lake, it's an ocean." This is the end of the main story, but it is continued in 2 DLC special episodes. In the first one, Alan wakes up in a nightmarish version of Bright Falls. Thomas Zane manages to contact Wake and says he is falling deeper into the dark place. He gives him a cell phone so he can try to help guide him out. As he tries to escape, he encounters TVs that show a more maniacal and mad version of himself that narrates different ways to try and stop Alan from escaping. Zane reveals that Alan himself is the cause of all this. The maniacal TV version is an irrational part of Alan's psyche that is consumed by fear, and his frenzied thoughts are affecting the dark place. Alan fights a giant television monster sent by the other Alan to kill him. He manages to defeat it, but wakes up back in the cabin, still trapped. This is the end of the first special. In the second special, Alan regains consciousness and finally accepts that he's the cause of all this and regains his memories. Zane informs him that irrational Alan is still inside the cabin, controlling the dark place, and that he must regain control in order to have any hope of escaping. Zane leads Alan to a lighthouse across the dark place as the other Alan tries to stop them. Alan eventually outwits his other self and makes it to the lighthouse, which lets him reach the cabin. Alan confronts a bunch of different versions of himself. Alan confronts a bunch of different visions before entering the cabin and finding the other Alan in a paranoid state on the floor. Alan touches him, and they are whole again. He realizes he cannot be allowed to fall into that state again, out of fear of never being able to escape. He takes out his typewriter and begins to write a new story. Thus ends the story of Alan Wake 1. Even if that was your first time hearing a summarized version of events, I still really recommend it to anyone, even a little bit interested. It really is a special experience, and I find myself thinking back on it constantly. The intro to Bright Falls is really perfect to me. Alan and Alice arriving from the water really makes it feel like a town separated from the world. Then they arrive at the diner, and it's straight out of Twin Peaks. I'm pretty sure even the diner setup is identical. The introduction of the dark presence is done very well with her being in the diner and interacting with Alan. You feel this sense of unease from her right away. I really enjoyed the townsfolk and how much character so much of them have. They feel like real people that have these extensive backstories and lives, rather than just a character. This leads me to really wishing we spent more time with a lot of them. Nightingale in particular is really fun in concept, with this paranoid FBI agent trying to stop the prophetic writer who has written about his own demise. I also liked his gimmick of calling Alan different author names. Ultimately, I think they missed the chance to create a way more fun dynamic and having an antagonist that is working parallel to the supernatural forces to stop Alan. Levels in the daytime or even nighttime alongside the other forces would have added tension alongside more proper interactions between the two. Narratively, I really loved all of it. The themes of light and dark, and the madness Alan encounters on the outside and within as he struggles with himself. The town of Bright Falls really feels alive from what we see of it. I feel that's due in part to the game's original open world intentions. I wish more levels were in the actual town itself. We spent more time interacting with the residents. The difference in designs, the dark presence and Zane, also make them all the more striking as opposing sides. This pale old widow, shrouded in darkness, versus this diver, with light bursting out everywhere, really makes them stand out and feel diametrically opposed. Barry was probably my favorite character next to Alan. I just loved his goofy personality and relationship with Alan. To repeat myself yet again, their friendship just feels very real and genuine. I also enjoyed watching him get into different antics and trouble, and the fact that he was Alan's guide in the specials was just the cherry on top. I also liked that they didn't make Alan's relationship with Alice picture perfect. We see them fight and have issues, but at the end of the day, they still love each other. I really found myself connecting to Alan, and just with this first game, he is one of my all-time favorite characters. As someone who does writing as their main creative output, and loves typewriters and collecting them, Wake kind of just checks all my boxes. He's an old school author, dealing with writer's block, uses a typewriter to write. I can't help but instantly resonate him to a high degree. I root for him in every situation, and I love how he narrates the story. The themes of light and dark, to go back to them, did well to add to that cinematic feel they were going for, and design the enemies the way they did by drawing them, and spilling some waters on it was so effective. They really do feel like these moving possessed shadows. The ending of the game was also perfectly bittersweet, with Alan sacrificing himself so his wife could return to reality. Having seen Twin Peaks, I was a little confused with the Mr. Scratch stuff at first, as Mr. C in Peaks is evil as shit. But in the game, Zane just treats Scratch like he's no big deal. This made me assume that at first that maybe he was a good or neutral doppelganger, but I've been told he's evil, so I find it funny Zane just acts like he's chill. The gameplay is fairly simple. You have to shine enemies with a light to get them weakened, and then you shoot them. You might be deceived at first into thinking Wake is a survival horror, but it's really not. It's an arcade horror shooter, essentially. You will never really have to worry about resources or managing them, except in the way of keeping an eye on how low your battery is or bullets, so you don't reload either at a bad time. It's really much more about bomb management and knowing your surroundings. To be quite honest, I found the gameplay to be the worst part of the game, which I know will potentially turn a lot of people away. I found the gameplay sections to feel like a chore I had to do to get to the narrative stuff I wanted and loved. It also had a bunch of stuff that just irks me in games. Its main form of difficulty is just spamming more enemies at you. There's not much enemy variety, and every boss fight just boils down to shine the light longer at them, and there's nothing really deeper than that. I'm hoping in Alan Wake 2, they play with the concept more and have more dynamic boss fights and enemy encounters. I expect it will, as even in the specials they started getting more creative with stuff, like having to run through areas filled with words that you need to avoid shining light on. The best gameplay part was definitely the rock stage section. Very fun and reminiscent of the Left 4 Dead 2 rock stage level. I thought the level design was really good for the most part. I got tired of every level having a decent sized "now it's time to run in the forest for a while" section. Other than that, the levels do a good job of connecting the narrative parts and fleshing out the area with their different locations. Once again, I do wish there were more parts explicitly in town though, as I found those to be the most fun and interesting parts. The episodic structure of the game really helped the way I consumed it, as it didn't feel like TV show episodes. I would do 1 or 2 a night before retiring, and that really allowed me to think back on the game each day. The music in this game is great and such a big part of this game. The songs at the end of each episode were all so fitting and good that every single one ended up in my personal playlist. I also really liked the in-universe band, Old Gods of Asgard, and how they were interwoven into the game. What's of the Fall, their real-life band, did really great with them. Other forms of art are a big part of this game, and I really loved how they intertwined the different things. The world has a radio show you can listen to at the radios, TVs with a fictional in-universe show called Night Springs, which is inspired by the Twilight Zone, a board game based on said Night Springs show. You even can see a little live-action talk show segment interview with Alan Wake. This game was so clearly made with so much love and inspirations from so many different things, and it really makes the game so much stronger for it. These things are also the backbone of what makes this world feel so alive and lived in. All in all, Alan Wake was a very special experience for me, and despite not really enjoying the gameplay, I find myself thinking of the game daily. It is the seed that started this universe full of life and characters I can't help but love. Now, it's time to get into the next game. Alan Wake's American Nut Quantum Break. Yeah, I know. This might seem like a weird second game to go into. I honestly only have one reason for playing this game before American Nightmare. I was very curious about the whole half TV show thing, and the fact that no one talks about this game really. Quantum Break was originally supposed to be Alan Wake 2. However, its focus was completely shifted to a new story and time travel, as Microsoft wanted a new intellectual property. The video game portion was developed by Remedy, while the TV show was handled by Lifeboat Productions. Funny enough, this kind of makes it the opposite of Alan Wake, not the studio wanted to continue their previous work, or forced to make a new IP. Once again, I'm going to summarize the story of Quantum Break, so buckle in and skip to this part in the video if you want to get straight to my thoughts about it. The game starts with the protagonist, Jack Joyce, being interviewed by Clarice Ogawa, as he starts to recount the events of the game. Obviously, this is reminiscent of Alan Wake and how he would narrate the story. We get sent to the beginning of the game as Jack tells us what happened. Jack came home to see his friend Paul, as he had wanted to show him something. As he walks around the university where he's supposed to meet him, we learn about Monarch, and it's planning to destroy the university library. Jack meets Paul inside the Mayer Physics Research Center. Paul talks to Jack about how time can be manipulated, and Jack expresses concern, as his brother had fallen down a similar path and was consumed by that idea of time travel. Paul shows him a machine he's been building and running legal experiments on. It's revealed that this is a time machine. Paul wants to go through the machine and wants Jack's help as he trusts him. Paul sets the machine for 2 minutes into the past, and Jack presses the buttons. A version of Paul from 2 minutes ago steps out as the machine opens. Future Paul tells the past one to step into the machine to complete the cycle, which he does. They go to continue testing as the machine begins to spark. Jack's brother, William, shows up with a gun and asks Jack what he is doing. William then asks for Jack's help to shut down the machine and explains that time is going to end if these things continue. Paul is still inside the machine as the core starts to implode. Jack tries to get him out, and time energy pushes its way through both of them as the core explodes and time freezes at 4:15 a.m. They wake up and Jack goes to check on Will. Jack sees that time is frozen and William is frozen in it. He grabs hold of Will, which brings him back. Will talks about being warned by someone that this would happen. Paul is still stuck within the machine, and as Jack goes back to trying to help, the sudden time unfreezes and alarms start going off. Soldiers of Monarch show up and begin shooting. Paul tells them to escape and that he will escape through the machine. As they escape, Will notices that something is going on with Jack's hands. As they proceed, a soldier shoots at Will, and Jack jumps in front of him and accidentally creates a time bubble that slows the bullets down. He then grabs Will's gun to take out the soldiers, and they escape, now aware of Jack's new time powers. As they continue escaping, Will theorizes that Jack's proximity to the time pulse is what altered him, and that time is slowly breaking down and will eventually end. Will says he has warned Paul about this. Troops get alerted by Will, then get called somewhere else as they get informed their target is elsewhere. They start to make their way through the building, with their target being Will's car, and hear on the radio that the soldiers are after them, meaning that they were the targets of the assault. Will says this must mean they're after a time machine. As they enter an elevator, Will reveals he built something that could fix time. Jack questions how Will was prepared for such an event. Will mentions someone named Beth Wilder, and says he will go into detail later. Jack goes ahead to go get Will's car and learns new time powers as he fights his way there. At Will's car, he hears Will get captured. He starts to go after him and gets held up at gunpoint by Beth Wilder, who works for Monarch. Jack demands to know where Will is, and she tells him he's in the library and lets him go. As Jack is making his way to Will, he gets helped out by several things: the power going out, soldiers getting shot, and others being confused as they are told Jack was spotted elsewhere on the university campus. Jack fights his way to Will. They begin to make their way back out into Will's car. Will explains he needs his briefcase in it, and to find Beth Wilder, and she knows about the fracture, and Will trusts her. When they get outside, Jack gets his name called out by an older looking Paul, who apologizes and freezes Will in time as he punches Jack through the door and knocks him unconscious. Jack wakes up as Will and Paul confront each other. Paul is trying to talk Will down and saying that the fracture cannot be fixed. Paul says he has lived in the future and the past for the last 17 years, and Will realizes Paul was the first experiment. Will tries to tell Paul that he has built a device that can stop the end of time, but this Paul is convinced it can't be stopped. Paul has his soldiers trigger an explosion in the library, and debris falls on top of Will. It's one of Paul's soldiers. Liam knocks Jack out. This is the end of Act 1. After each act you get a junction where you play as Paul and make a choice that will affect the TV show that plays after each junction. The first junction has Paul recording a testimony of his actions, as Jack is loaded into the back of a Monarch van and driven away as Beth Wilder watches. Paul goes to the dry docks where his right-hand man, Martin Hatch, is waiting. Hatch tells Paul that the van Jack was in has gone off radar, and that they have a traitor inside the company. Paul has a vision of Jack arriving at the Monarch mansion at a later point in time, but tells Hatch to find Jack anyway. Hatch says that due to Jack's actions, and this is from the university or bought here, and they have to make a choice. Either take a brutal approach and get rid of witnesses but risk the public turning on them, or create a PR strategy and put the blame of the university on Jack, which will leave loose ends and allow Jack to access some of Monarch's secrets. Paul has a flashback of what he went through in the time machine, and explains how he saw the end of time. I chose the PR route, and so the public is on Monarch's side, as they use a witness from the university, Amy, as the face of their campaign. Next, we have the first TV episode. There are 4 TV episodes, and they happen after each junction. The first TV episode begins with us seeing Amy in an interrogation room and blackmailed into working for Monarch as their face for this PR campaign. We follow Liam as he is told by Hatch about the disappearance of Jack's van. One of their tech guys, Charlie Wincott, is working on locating it. Liam has reservations about how things were handled at the university. Hatch tells him to go home, and Liam sees he has 3 missed calls from his wife. Charlie Wincott manages to get access to all the city's cameras as he looks for Jack. Charlie brags about how if he sends an email to the mayor that Monarch is offering security forces, he can have control of the whole area. Charlie also has Amy's PR video sent out to the news station as planned. Hatch asks where Jack is, and Charlie says he has a lock on the transfer camera and is waiting to see its final location. Hatch tells him to locate Liam, and he gets an update and mentions that they have a traitor. Charlie also gets invited to a work party by a fellow coworker named Fiona, who he clearly has a crush on. Liam arrives at his home, switches outfits, and hides his gun in his car. He goes inside and apologizes to his wife for being so busy, and she mentions him being a field manager, unaware of his real job. His wife is also in the beginning stages of pregnancy. Soon after, Liam gets a call from Charlie and apologizes yet again as he has to leave for work. Another stutter in time occurs before returning back to normal. Hatch informs Paul about Jack, but Paul says that he knows Jack will be on the island later. Hatch says Paul needs to take his treatment. We learn that Monarch Security and the police have teamed together. Monarch is now in control. Jack Joyce is blamed for the university attack. Liam then arrives at the warehouse where Jack is and finds Beth uncuffing him. They have a confrontation as Beth tries to explain herself, and suddenly their guns are gone, and Beth opens the van to see Jack is gone too. He tells Liam how time is ending. Monarch has been prepping for it and that Jack may be able to fix it. Beth talks about the lifeboat protocol and how top Monarch personnel will be kept in a safe zone when time ends so they can find a way to fix it. Soldiers show up and the 2 kill them. Beth says that Dr. Kim is connected to the lifeboat protocol and she wants to get it to his lab, but it's been hard as he has disappeared. Charlie spots all of this on camera, but only sees Liam and supposes that he is the traitor. He uploads the footage to give to Hatch when Liam shows up in his office. Liam wants access to Dr. Kim's lab. Liam notices the footage of him and the 2 have a confrontation, which Charlie escapes by bluffing and saying he already has a security alert on him. Liam runs as Charlie actually puts an alert on him. Liam manages to escape but gets caught after a car chase. End of episode 1. The game cuts back to Jack and we see him escape the van and freeze time, taking the guns of Liam and Beth. As he makes his way through the area, he hears Ogawa and Paul talk. Paul says Jack will show up to the gala later. After finding some soldiers, Jack finds a headpiece. He gets into contact with Beth. He tells him there is a Chronon harvesting operation close by, and Paul is around them. Jack decides to go and try to get revenge. As he continues his way through, he finds Amy, about to get killed by soldiers, and alerts them to his presence. Jack takes them out, and Amy recognizes him. Amy apologizes and leads him out of the warehouse into a terminal, where she planned to find information on Monarch. As he fights more enemies, time continues to stutter. Amy explains that he is heading to an area where they harvest chronon energy. Chronon energy is what creates the black hole in the time machines which fuel it. It's an energy and type of radiation associated with temporal anomalies, and is what allows time to flow. He tells Jack about how his brother had been pressured into selling out his research about chronon in 2010 to Monarch. Jack finds Will's briefcase and a key inside to the Bradbury swimming pool in his phone. In the distance, he spots Will's old workshop, which is referred to as Ground Zero, and starts to make his way there. Time continues to stutter and get worse. Jack gets to Will's workshop and witnesses it all be built through the glitches in time. He sees how Will struggles. And builds a time machine, and sees him working on the countermeasure. As he reaches the center, he sees a version of Beth, with the countermeasure in hand and pointing a gun at Paul. Time then reverts back to the present day. Jack leaves Ground Zero and gets a call from Paul, who says how Will forced his hand, and for Jack to meet him at the Monarch Gala. They have an encounter as Paul is leaving in a helicopter, and Paul uses his time powers to escape and collapse a crane in the boat. Jack makes his way through the crash as he fights through enemies. He reunites with Beth and Amy, and they drive away, on their way to the Bradbury swimming pool. They arrive, and Beth says that there's most likely something here that Will wants to keep hidden. Beth tells Jack about how she was working for Monarch undercover, that they need to find the countermeasure before time gets worse. Jack also spots a taxi there that he thinks looks exactly like the one going to the university. They find a video inside addressed to Beth from Will in 2010. Will explains how the countermeasure is gone and went missing on July 4th, 2010, and wants to know if Beth has it. Beth says that she has never even met Will. They get to the main area and find the second time machine. Jack activates the machine with Will's key, but it is not working correctly. They need a Monarch doctor. Sophia Amarell fixed the machine. She'll be at the Monarch Gala. Jack remembers Paul saying he would see him there, and it cuts to Jack turning himself in at the gala. End of the game Act 2. In Junction 2, we see Paul and Hatch debating what to do with Jack. Jack has claimed to have found Will's time machine, but the two are hesitant to believe him, as they've been unable to find it for 17 years. The choice here is whether Paul goes, has a one-on-one with Jack, as the two are previously best friends. This will lead to Hatch making the speech at the gala and being shot at, leading to Paul losing his grip on Monarch as it begins to fail. The other is to focus on Monarch and forget about his past relationship with Jack. After you choose one, you see another flashback of Paul, making his way out the time machine. He says how he managed to escape to 1999, where everything started. We see him staggering away with a gun and shooting at someone. He explains that by trying to change things, he only made them happen in the first place. I chose to speak to Jack one last time, as the two are very close and Paul avoids killing him at several intervals before this. I figured he'd make one last attempt to convince his most trusted friend that he is in the right. The next TV show episode starts with Paul in a gas mask, huffing in the treatment that we heard about previously. Sophia Amaral holds his hand as she says the treatments are losing their effectiveness. He's concerned about the stutters, thinks that time might end sooner than they think. Paul says that he has seen the end, so he knows when it will happen, and she tells him to reconsider, and that he might have misinterpreted something. Paul says he has to go and talk to Jack, leaving Amaro looking stressed. Charlie and Fiona are at the party, and Charlie brags about dealing with eternal affairs. Fiona pushes him and he tells her he helped catch a traitor, but won't say who. Fiona goes to the bathroom and can be seen looking quite panicked. We see Liam and Jack handcuffed in a Monarch van before it goes back to the gala, where Amaro and Hatch butt heads as they don't see eye to eye. Paul interrupts this and Hatch goes to repair his speech. He is now in a cell and convinces the guard to let him go to the bathroom and knocks him out. Fiona invites Charlie out on a walk, and they run into the escaped Liam. He holds him at gunpoint and says he needs to get into the research laboratory for the lifeboat protocol. Fiona reveals herself as another traitor who is working with Beth and leads him to the lab. When they get there, a betrayed-looking Charlie hacks into it. They find a big contraption with Dr. Kim inside. He has been turned into a chronon-disrupted life form due to exposed radiation to the chronon energy. Jack is in an interrogation room when Paul walks in. Paul talks to him about the past, how you can't stop or change things. Fix things, Paul is willing to sacrifice most of humanity. Jack asks about his brother's death, and Paul attempts to justify it, which makes Jack angry. Paul gives up on trying to convince him right now and leaves. I'm going to explain the other situation that happens when Hatch talks to Jack instead, as it is very relevant information. Hatch tells Jack how he and Paul are actually very different, and that Hatch is much more realistic. He says how Paul is dangerous and will only make things worse. He leaves a gun and a key to Jack's handcuffs on the table. I bring this up because this information will be very relevant and come into play how I chose the next junction choice. Me and my friend played this game essentially side by side and chose opposite choices in Act 2, and so he got this scene while I got the Paul one. So I knew Hatch was a traitor ahead of time, but I also still would have known as later in the level I found a narrative collectible, which is an email from Hatch planning the guillotine and assassination of Amaral in order to accelerate Paul's Cronin disease. When this becomes more relevant later, just know why I made that choice and that you can find out Hatch is a traitor without that scene. Back at the lab, Charlie finds a ghost document on the countermeasure by Amaral. Amaral talks about increasing frequencies and stutters, and that the CFR is the key to all of this. Just FYI, the CFR is the countermeasure renamed and helped Monarch to make tech to stop stutters in certain places and create localized chronon fields. Alarms go off in the lab, and the three run when a stutter hits the area and freezes Fiona. Liam and Charlie stay in the lab as it is stutter-proof, and Liam goes and grabs chronon harnesses which will allow them to go through time stutters unaffected. Soldiers come in and Liam gets into a firefight. Charlie grabs the harnesses and escapes alone. Time goes back to normal, and Fiona and Liam now also escape. End of episode 2. Back to the game. Beth Waller frees Jack and gives him a gun and earpiece. Beth says Amaral is either at the party or the research lab, and that she'll check the party while Jack goes to the lab. As Jack fights his way there, Beth says how she's worried a stutter may occur while trying to get Amaral, and asks to see if she has one in her office, that Jack can grab for Beth. Jack fights his way through a lab as we see on TV Hatch gives his speech and gets shot at, and Jack grabs a harness for Beth. He then sees an invitation to the party on her desk and goes to make his way there. As he fights his way out the lab, Beth tells him that she spotted Amaral. Jack makes his way to the mansion where a time stutter has occurred. We then hear the interrogation and narrates the story continue as Ogawa says she thinks it was Beth that shot at Hatch during the speech. Jack refutes this and says he believes that Hatch got shot at by someone else to look like a target. Jack finds Beth frozen and gives her the harness so she won't be affected by future stutters. They go to Amaral's room as they plan to escape by boat. When they get there, they see a drone outside her window. Frozen in the process of breaking in to kill Amaral. They unfreeze her and hold Amaral at gunpoint to force her to come with them. Beth and Amaral escape by boat as Jack fights off troops and escapes by car. End of Act 3. Paul talks to Hatch, driving his Tourette. He demands to know how Jack took Amaral. Hatch talks to Paul and says how they have traitors. A soldier arrives with Amaral's laptop, and Paul wants to look at her data, as she's been saying the fractures are getting worse. Hatch says that Paul knows when time will end, not Amaral, and tries to waver Paul's trust in her. Hatch wants him to hold off on activating the lifeboat protocol and allow him to sort things out. The choice here is whether to trust Amaral and suspect Hatch, or trust Hatch and suspect Amaral. Trusting Amaral will lead to Hatch getting apprehended by Monarch and Paul activating the lifeboat protocol early. Trusting Hatch will have Paul send a team after her, as Hatch says Amaral is connected to Beth. Honestly, I think no matter what, the choice that makes the most sense is Amaral. From everything you see, she actually cares about Paul, while even at best, Hatch looks like he's hiding stuff. After making the choice, Paul has troops put on Hatch to watch him, and narrates how he had met Beth in the past. You see a flashback of Beth arriving in 1999 and shooting at Paul trying to kill him. Paul escapes. End of Junction 3. The show starts with Charlie making his way back to the Monarch Mansion and talking to Hatch, asking him about the lifeboat protocol, and if he is on the list of personnel who will survive the end of time. Hatch tells him, not under Paul Serene's lead. Hatch says how Paul wants time to end rather than to fix it, and if Charlie gets Hatch access to the countermeasure, Hatch will take over Monarch with Charlie as his right hand. Charlie makes his way back to headquarters. Paul gets informed that time really is ending faster than they thought, as another stutter hits. Charlie runs back into Liam and Fiona on his way to headquarters. He tells them about the lifeboat protocol and that he can get them on the list. Unbeknownst to the two, Charlie is on speaker with Hatch on the other end. Liam and Charlie have a conversation, and the three continue on their way. In the lab, Hatch uses Amaral's fingerprints to enter and talks to Dr. Kim before releasing him and blowing up the lab. As Liam, Charlie, and Fiona continue, Liam gets shot from behind. Charlie talks his way out of being shot too, and he and Fiona leave. Fiona punches Charlie and blames him for Liam, leaving him behind. Liam ends up surviving and kills the soldier who shot him. Hatch tells Paul about the lab destruction and puts the blame on Jack and Beth. Paul hallucinates visions through time and asks about his treatment. They got destroyed in the blast too. Paul blames Hatch, even though Hatch shows him logs of it being Amaral who entered the lab before the explosion. Paul leaves him and refuses to believe Amaral betrayed him. He goes to the countermeasure and activates the lifeboat protocol, which disappoints Hatch. Monarch personnel are picked up and taken to the Monarch building to survive the end of time. Liam makes his way to where his wife works, and convinces her to come with him to Monarch headquarters, as he kills soldiers after them. Paul is shown inside HQ and has a vision of Hatch being taken into custody. He gets a call from a trooper saying he has information on Hatch. Paul tells him he wants Hatch apprehended. End of episode 3. Jack calls Beth and gives her a made-up spot. Jack gets pursued by Monarch across the bridge and fights his way across. A stutter occurs which prevents Beth from getting to Jack. A ship crashes into the bridge, causing massive destruction, which gets frozen in time. Jack makes his way through it and into the water. Back at the Bradbury swimming pool, Amaral tells Jack and Beth that they need to hand the time machine over to Monarch. Jack says time needs to be fixed, but Amaral is adamant that it cannot be stopped. Beth shows Amaral the countermeasure, how they plan to go into the past and obtain it. Amaral reluctantly agrees to help. Amy takes Amaral to the machine. Jack and Beth discuss where to go back in time. Beth mentions the video Will made that mentions her taking it in 2010, and that they need to go back in time and make that happen. Jack wants to go back before the fracture to change things, while Beth believes that they can't be changed and thus not so easily fixed. Jack doesn't trust Amaral, as she looks like he knew what the countermeasure was. They don't know the CFR's the countermeasure. I just clarified what it was, or explaining things would be a lot more confusing, naming them back and forth. Amy shows Jack a video of Will back in 1999, the first experiment with the time machine. Something comes out of the machine and shoots at Will, causing him to fall to the floor in pain. This was thought to be Paul when he escaped back in 1999, and what Will realizes at the beginning of the game. Jack and Beth find a mural as they do stuff to fix the time machine. It's of an older woman handing a book to the little girl with the signature Toto. Beth says that is her signature. She recognizes the mural and says that in 1999, when she was a little girl, an older woman gave her a journal full of events of the future. She shows Jack the journal and they realize that the older woman was her. She tells Jack that nothing could be changed, no matter what she tried to do. Jack then agrees to do Beth's plan, time travel. Jack sets the date as Beth walks into the machine. Jack turns to see Amaral tampering with the machine. He tells him that Monarch's needs are more important, and they need the countermeasure for the lifeboat protocol. They sets the date and tells Amy to tie up a marl and get as far away as they can. Jack enters the machine and progresses back in time to 2010. As he arrives, he hears gunshots and goes to investigate. Here, he finds an older Beth Wilder. He collapses to the ground in shock as Jack asks her what happens. We see flashbacks of Beth arriving to 2016 due to a marl. She looks out and sees the end of time for herself. She tells Jack how she fought to get back to the past, and eventually made her way back to 1999, following Paul through the machine. She shoots at Serene as he escapes the workshop, and she notices Will on the ground, the gunshot wound. It was her who shot Will in 1999. Beth introduces herself to Will, and Jack realizes she is the reason he built the countermeasure. He also realizes she has been in the past for 11 years, and asks why she didn't return. She refuses to answer, and tells him that they need to get ready. Beth tells him that the countermeasure is at Will's original workshop. They need to go get it. Jack says he will try to change things, but Beth thinks it's useless, and is no longer sure if they can win. They make their way to the workshop, sneaking past Monarch. As they search for the countermeasure, Jack hears echoes of the past from Will, hearing him obsessed with the time machine and countermeasure, and forgetting to maintain his failing relationship with Jack. They find the safe with the countermeasure and Monarch shows up. Jack fights them off and hears Paul with Beth. He re-enters the building as Paul attempts to convince Beth to hand over the countermeasure and join him. He shoots at Paul and he dodges and shoots her in the shoulder. Beth drops the countermeasure and arms it, which sets off a blast of chronon particles that sends Jack back to the same point he left in 2016. The three of them were the cause of Ground Zero all along. Jack is back in the present without Beth and the countermeasure and sees an echo of Beth turn off the countermeasure and lying on the ground dazed. Paul gets up and declares that he is not wrong and shoots her in the head. Jack now knows Monarch had the countermeasure all along and goes to get it and confront Paul. End of Act 4. Paul is at the Monarch HQ, looking at the countermeasure and laments at what little time he has left, as his Chronon syndrome continues to push him to the edge. The soldier informs him he has reports on the lab, and Paul goes to meet him as he becomes increasingly unstable. The soldier reveals he is the one surviving treatment for Paul, and Paul wonders if this is another trap set for him, and who he can trust. The choice here is to either take the treatment and remain in control, allowing him to seek Liam as an ally and guard for the countermeasure, in exchange of letting his wife in the lifeboat. Or stop fighting the syndrome and damn everyone for betraying him. This would lead to Charlie taking the countermeasure for Jack. I chose to take the treatment. Paul sees a possible future of him fighting Jack at the Bradbury swimming pool and gets to work. End of Junction 4. The last TV episode starts. We see Monarch soldiers converge on Mr. Hatch. They take him into custody with his hands zip tied behind his back. They get into an elevator, and when the door opens below, we see Hatch walk out and adjust his tie. It cuts to all the soldiers dead in the elevator. Amal enters the HQ and says she needs to see Paul. She is surprised he actually initiated the protocol and asks if he has been taking his treatment. Paul says she was right. They go to the lifeboat and that he will meet her later. We then see him on a helicopter going to the Bradbury swimming pool. Charlie hacks into Monarch at the HQ and adds him and Fiona to the list and tries to call her, but she doesn't pick up. We then see Fiona trying to contact Beth Wilder on the radio. Jack gets in contact having found out about her and Beth, and tells her that Beth was murdered by Paul. He says he's looking for the countermeasure, and Fiona realizes it is the CFR. She then sees a message from Charlie saying she was on the list, and the location, and makes her way there. Charlie sees Fiona enter the lifeboat and they talk. Fiona saying how Jack can fix the fracture, and that they shouldn't trust Monarch to actually fix things. Fiona gets ready to go find the countermeasure, but Charlie volunteers instead, saying she would be better in the lifeboat just in case. We see Liam fight his way past soldiers to HQ alongside his wife. He runs into Paul, who convinces him to guard the CFR, leveraging Liam's care for his wife, and saying she'll be in the lifeboat and safe, while Monarch fixes things. Liam agrees and makes his way up to the countermeasure, holding his gunshot as he goes. Paul and his wife go to the lifeboat. Paul gives one last speech, reminding the employees of what they were working for and how he will not be there. Knows they will succeed. Charlie enters the CFR chamber and gains access to it and informs Jack the countermeasure is ready to take. Liam shows up and Charlie tries to get him on their side and convince him that Jack can fix things. He is then shot in the head by Hatch, who then continues to shoot at Liam. They fight as Hatch talks about his new world, which will have balance. They struggle and Liam stabs him in the chest and eye, leaving him quote-unquote dead on the floor. He puts on a suit and waits for Jack. End of episode 4. Jack fights his way through Monarch HQ. As he does this, we see Dr. Kim in certain areas killing soldiers. He makes it to Liam at the top of the tower. Liam refuses to stand down, and he has to be put down. Walking into the area where the countermeasure is held, you can see Charlie's body in a body bag, but Hatch is not anywhere to be found. Jack is unable to work the CFR, so he sets Monarch's time machine to travel back to its first activation, the night of the university attack and Will's death. As he fights his way back through the university, we learn that he was also there and being chased by Monarch. Hence the confusion by them at the beginning of the game. We also see Beth snipe soldiers and help, which Jack had already assumed had been her. Dad makes it to Will as the debris is about to fall on him and saves him. Jack says that he saved him, but Will asks if he actually saw him die, which is true. You see the debris fall, and Will appears to be crushed, but it is not actually seen explicitly. Holy fuck me. Will warns Jack that they can't repair the fracture there, as it would erase key future events and trigger a time paradox. The things that happened and people who were lost must stay that way. They pass a frozen Beth. Jack stops himself from unfreezing her. They reach the Bradbury pool and travel forward in time to find Paul and his soldiers waiting for them. They have one final encounter, and Jack kills Paul. They hook the countermeasure to the time machine, and Jack uses his power to jumpstart it. The countermeasure activates and reestablishes. It does not fully repair the damage done to time. It also disintegrates Paul in the process. Jack has a vision of his future self traveling to the end of time and begins to exhibit symptoms of Cronon syndrome. We then see the moment Jack killed the frozen Beth and see him say to her that he will come back for her. Flash forward to Jack leaving the interrogation that has been serving as the narration of the game. He runs into Hatch, who explains that everything has been blamed on Paul. He offers Jack a place at Monarch, and Jack is shown seeing a split pathway, similar to what Paul would see in the Junctions. The game ends before he makes a decision. I thought I had mixed feelings on Alan Wake. The truth is, I love that game, even if I don't care for the game. I really do not care for time travel shit in general. I always think it either requires too much explaining, or that the writing isn't tight enough, and so all I see are holes. Quantum Break falls in the former half for me, and I just don't find that interesting. That being said, I can't help but respect what it was trying to do, and end on a conceptual level. I want to start by talking about the choice system, because that is what I had the biggest change about while writing down the summary of the game. After I beat the game, I found myself let down by the choices, as they don't actually change anything major. And from the choices I picked, it seems like they changed a little scene or line at most. While I had the summary of the story up to help me write it down and summarize it a bit more concisely for this vid, I read through the different paths, and they do actually change a good bit. Some things include whether or not Amaro mentions that Hatch is probably behind the time machine breaking at the university, whether Paul ends up killing Amaro or not. Liam can be killed by Hatch on top of the tower. You can also just have a different companion from Amy the whole game. So the choices change more side stuff and can reveal more than I thought. All the main points in Amy remain the same no matter what though. So the choices actually reflect the reoccurring theme in the game that you can't stop or change things that are meant to happen. This makes me respect the concept and artistic choice of that a lot more than I did before. However, when one of the main selling points of the game is the choices and how they affect things, it's always going to feel like a letdown, and it still is at the end of the day, minor things and that's it. I think one of the things that makes this game feel a little off is that it's so grand in concept that Quantum Break ends up almost feeling like a proof of concept rather than a full realization. It's this game about time travel. There's always a grand idea paired with the whole idea of a TV show where choices affect its outcome. It really builds up this big idea in your head when you think about it, and then you play it and the story is fine. You really only focus on a handful of people and areas. This game has 5 acts, and 2 of them are focused around the university and Bradbury swimming pool, and you go back to the swimming pool in other acts as well. Alan Wake made Bright Falls feel a lot more expansive with its levels, while Quantum Break makes its city feel very small and non-existent. Then you also go to the choices and it's just option A or B, in 4 5-minute sections with the junctions. They feel like a telltale game section rather than anything poignant at those moments. I think it's an easy assumption to make that it feels so held back from its concept due to budgetary reasons, especially with having to also produce the show. I also think Remedy did their best with what they had, and a lot of people would make a much worse product given the resources. As a fellow creative, I really respect the ideas and concepts for the game. I think a lot of its ideas are cool and very creative. I can't think of any other well-known studio who would come up with the idea of merging a TV show with a game, having choices affect the show. This just might have been a case of eyes being too big for your stomach, and concept so grand that it's bound to be a little bit of a letdown for players. This leads to another issue I had with the game, and a lot of its character arcs. It being half show and half game, neither side gives you enough time to truly care about a lot of the characters or make their arcs feel natural. When Beth died, I just felt a little bit of disappointment as I found the concept of her and her story way more interesting than Jack's. It also feels like Jack's response to it makes sense in his anger, but the game also starts to treat it like he had some deep relationship with Beth when he barely knew her. Then there's the stuff with Paul and choices of his that you can make that just don't make any sense from what we have seen. The whole chaos choice where you can damn everybody and his instability really just come out of nowhere, it feels like. I know a large part of it is due to his Crohn disease, but despite having whole parts where he plays him, it does not seem to be a big deal either, until the end. One part he seems relatively fine, and then the next time you see him, he's on the edge of death and insanity. The game should have had us spend more time with him, especially since he's the antagonist and one of the more interesting characters. Let us inside his head and see these progressions. Have us play as him when he goes to the end of time. Make it so I can easily believe this guy, whose whole thing has been stick to the plan, is now ready to sacrifice it all. Then there's the TV show, which is 4 20-minute episodes, which is really not enough time to make you care about the characters who are mainly in it and not the game. I don't care about Fiona because I know nothing about her. You get very brief little mentions of stuff in the show. Liam is a little more easy to be invested in, and that's mainly because he's such a typical trope that you can fill in all the blanks for yourself. He's the family man, doing all this to protect his wife because it's all he knows how to do. He's easy to root for because of this, but he's far from interesting or dynamic. Charlie's arc in the show had the biggest problems for me. We know he has a crush on Fiona, but at every single critical moment he has acted with self-interest. This is the guy who stole the harnesses for himself and had Hatch on the line when Fiona and Liam caught back up to him. All this, and then suddenly Fiona easily convinces him Jack is the best option and Charlie is ready to sacrifice himself and go to the countermeasure in his stead. It just feels so incredibly out of nowhere, and at first I thought he might be doing it to give Hatch access like he wanted to, but no, it really is for Jack. If this was a standard, well-written TV show, we would have gotten more episodes in between, where we saw him stew in his guilt over what he did, and probably have him witness things, lead him to believe Monarch wasn't the best choice. But because it isn't, and the show does not have that kind of time, his sudden turn to heroics just feels so forced. I almost cheered when he died because it left a sour taste in my mouth. At least Charlie has some personality though. The protagonist of this game, Jack Joyce, is really such a piece of carbon. Every character around him is more interesting. He's just kind of this charismatic black hole that gives flat one-liners occasionally. Beth actually makes her a much more interesting character. Even her relationship with Paul is more compelling. Her questioning things and regretting how she tried to kill him made her much more interesting than Jack, who doesn't have anything going on. He's just mad about his brother and wants revenge. He was best friends with Paul, but you don't really hear about it, and the only person that really seems more connected with that now broken relationship is Paul, not Jack. I just really think having Beth be the protagonist, or at least have us actually play her for a couple parts of the game, would have made things more interesting. Another big annoyance of mine are the narrative collectibles. Alan Wake. It's extra stuff like the radio shows, TV show, and manuscripts all felt like they really fleshed out the world. I never felt like I'd be missing very important things about main characters if I didn't find them all. Plus, all of their presentations are very charming, with even the manuscript pages being narrated by Wake himself. Alan Wake's extra stuff was fine-tuned to fit my special taste, and Quantum Break is the opposite. There are 153 narrative collectibles in this game, and they have a decent range from notes to whiteboard graphs. A good majority are long emails. There's actually so much information that is in them, and it's not just relatively minor stuff. There's much about the actual major characters like Mr. Hatch that is in the notes and stuff only, and I just think that's such a waste. Have Paul react to the information if Hatch leaves him a note, or Jack. My choices, I just had almost no information about him and had to look it up. I don't want to have to read through every note and piece of extra information in the collectibles in order to learn stuff about a major character in the story. Especially when you can easily have at least some of it in the main game and not those collectibles. If Alan Wake's gameplay is a leg, Quantum Breaks is an slightly deeper leg. The gameplay is pretty standard gunplay, where you can have a pistol and two bigger guns paired with Jack's time powers. Jack's powers essentially break down to a dodge dash, a shield type power that slows bullets around you, a time bubble you throw to freeze enemies in place, a time blast, which is the time bubble you throw that blows up on impact, and finally, a time run where time slows down and you run, and it's primarily for accessing enemy weak points or doing takedowns. There is a fairly basic upgrade system where you can upgrade each power up to 3 times besides like the time blast, which is 2 times. You get these upgrades by finding little time rifts in each level. So if you want upgrades, you have to try and explore levels at least a little bit. I know this annoyed a good bit of people, but I find myself to be fairly neutral on it. There are enough of the rifts just lying around the main parts of the level. You can upgrade most powers once or twice. The game is really not that hard, so you shouldn't need more than that. I did prefer the combat in this game over Alan Wake 1. I found it a lot less annoying, though it is still tedious, as especially towards the end of the game, it loves just spamming enemies at you. I do think a lot of my annoyances with Alan Wake are mirrored in this game. Lack of enemy variety, there are like 5, maybe 6 enemy types. Levels just have a little too much fluff, where they all overstay their welcome just a bit. Also just a lack of locations, which I mentioned earlier. I do think combat can be a decent time if you really make use of your time powers and stay moving. To quickly speak of the one major technical issue in this game, which I'm pretty sure is just on the PC version, as my friend had the exact same problem. At the beginning of Act 4, on the bridge section, right in the beginning the game just suffers from huge dips in frame rate. It's not something small there, it really makes it hard to play, and the only reason it's somewhat manageable is that you only have to do it like one combat section before you are past it, and the frame rate goes back to normal. So if you do play this game, just prepare yourself for that. Now I really dislike the final section of this game. It's just set up to be annoying, with sections that have you run through long areas as snipers and soldiers shoot at you. It's just not a fun time. I think snipers in this game are the equivalent to the dudes that throw their axes at you in Alan Wake, in terms of the level that they annoy me. Then at the top of the tower with my choices, I had Liam waiting for me. It's the final guard of the countermeasure. And man, he feels like such a waste. The last TV episode sets him up as like this final stand, and then in game he dies as easily as most grunts. I just shot him a couple times with a shotgun and he was done. I was really expecting a boss fight with how much focus he had gone in the show. Speaking of boss fights, the last fight with Paul really is not fun at all. Once again, you are back to the Bradbury swimming pool, and you fight waves of enemies as Paul loses control and shoots out time blasts like attacks at you. Once you defeat the wave, he shoots out a giant one, They want to kill you, and this area is full of objects and things that you can easily run into and get stuck on. Which, as you can guess, can be very annoying. Boss fight is really stretching it though, as you just fight off a wave of soldiers, all will shoot out this big wave, and once you survive it, you shoot them. Doesn't matter if it's one or a couple. And another wave of enemies comes out, you fight them off, and Paul shoots out multiple big blasts. You shoot them again, and it's over. It's a very anticlimactic fight, and end for one of the more interesting characters in the game. The last thing I wanted to bring up was this game's connections to Alan Wake. Now Remedy does not own the rights to Quantum Break, but it's heavily implied and agreed upon that like 2 characters from Alan Wake 2 are some kind of versions of Jack and Mr. Hatch. So I would guess that at the very least, some version of the events went down. Now of course, before all those issues with the rights was more explicitly connected to Wake, I'm just going to list the things I found and noticed throughout my playthrough of the game. Start with one of the earliest ones, and probably my favorite. One of the tents at the university, there's a TV that plays one of the early trailers for Alan Wake 2. I had a mini fanboy reaction to it, and it's funny seeing the differences from that one and what Alan Wake 2 would become. There's an Old Gods of Asgard poster, and Paul is wearing one of their shirts. You can find one of Alan Wake's books dedicated to Liam's wife, Emily Burke. You also see a copy of that book in Liam's house during the first episode of the TV show. In Act 4, you can find a TV where you can hear people auditioning for the show Night Springs, the Twilight Zone-inspired show that exists in Alan Wake. I know there's others, and I'll probably go and see what they are later, but these are the ones I found on my playthrough, and they all put a smile on my face. I just love little Easter eggs like these connecting the games in one way or another. All in all, Quantum Break is a game I have very mixed feelings on. I went into the script with much more grievances with it, but as I went through the story again, and read about the other choices and paths, I could not help but soften up a bit on it. As a creative, I can respect it on several levels, especially on a conceptual. It's a game I wish had more to it, so it could truly live up to its idea. And it's ultimately a game I am glad exists, even if I don't particularly care about playing it ever again. I really respect Remedy and the amount of research they do with their games, and just how different and yet the same this game is to Alan Wake in many ways. Speaking of Alan Wake, let's go to our third and final game of this RemedyVerse episode, Alan Wake's American Nightmare.
Blurred and nowhere as vividly as in Night Springs.
I looked at reviews for Alan Wake's American Nightmare before I played it, and it seems its place in the series has also confused people slightly. Not quite DLC, and not quite a sequel. It exists as a little standalone or side journey adventure. Its place has always been questioned, the first rumors of it being people thinking it's Alan Wake 2. So let's dive into this game that is in the in-between, a place easily forgotten by fans, and set in Night Springs. Once more, here's a time step for when I will be done summarizing the story, so skip ahead if you just want my thought. The game starts with the camera going into the motel room of Barry Wheeler. We see that he is now the manager of the Old Gods of Asgard. The TV in the room turns on. It is playing an episode of Night Springs. You see Alan Wake standing in a field of dark mist. The narrator begins, telling us that the Champion of Light is chasing the Herald of Darkness, Mr. Scratch, who is Alan's evil doppelganger. We first saw him at the end of the first game. We hear Mr. Scratch laughing in the distance. Alan turns and sees nothing. He shouts in frustration that he will catch Mr. Scratch eventually. Scratch taunts him, saying that he will take away everything Wake loves. Alan is engulfed by darkness and wakes up in a canyon in Night Springs. He makes his way to a motel nearby, picking up his usual tools on the way there, that being guns and a flashlight. He runs from a large crowd of Taken into the motel nearby. There he meets Emma Sloan and asks her for the manuscript page he says she found. She says it said something about the oil derrick and a satellite, It mentions the weird taken hanging around. Alan says he will deal with them, and she gives him the page, which informs him of the items he is going to need. Once he gathers them all, and has Emily charge the battery, he goes to the oil derrick and follows what the manuscript says, so he can stop the darkness pouring from the oil derrick and rewrite reality. After following the directions, it causes an asteroid to smash into a space satellite, which makes it crash and destroy the oil derrick. The area goes into flames, and he runs back to the motel. He saves Emma from the taken and asks her about Mr. Scratch. She explains he was throwing a party in one of the rooms, but does not know which one. Afterwards, he went to the diner and caused a fight. He gives Wake the keys to the diner, which she happens to have, and says she's going to get out of here. Alan tries to warn her that she needs to stay here in the light, but she does not listen. He goes to the diner, and darkness sweeps into the garage where Emily is, and kills her. Alan enters the diner and sees the scene of destruction inside. He finds a motel key, heads back, and goes inside that room. A dead body is on the floor. He finds keys to a local observatory. He makes his way there. He arrives at the observatory and rings the button at the doors. A woman's voice rings out the intercom, telling him to go away due to the trouble he caused earlier. Alan manages to convince her that that was not him. She lets him in and introduces herself as Dr. Rachel Meadows. He asks her what happened with Mr. Scratch. She says there's a strange astronomical event happening that is messing up the satellite and projecting a strange signal. Alan says that's what he is here for. And Meadows tells him that's what Scratch was there for too. He got angry and damaged the imaging array. Alan goes to her car and gets the array, getting back taken on his way. He makes his way back and replaces it. The pressure causes everything to malfunction, and Alan has to fix it. He goes to the valves and releases the pressure before making his way back. Meadows says that the signal is rather interesting, as if it was intended for him, but he only receives part of the signal from the printout machine. The signal is a way to cause a new reality, and the roadmap he has to follow to make it happen. This leads him to the drive-in theater nearby next. At the theater, he runs into a woman trying to seduce him. She has been infected by the darkness. He has to go turn the bar back on in order to remove it. Scratch pops up several times as he goes to do that, and taunts him as he sends Taken his way. He turns the power back on, and returns to the woman and turns on the lights. Darkness is purged from her, and she introduces herself as Serena Valdivia. She tells Alan that Scratch was trying to get into the projector room. I was talking about making it so the sun would never come up again. He gives Alan an access code to the projector room, and he makes his way there, defeating the security that Scratch sets up for the place. Alan goes in the projector room and follows what the manuscript says. Unfortunately, since it was only partial, it was not enough to fix things, and he is back in the field of darkness. Scratch yells to him, asking what he's up to, and reiterates that he's going to take away everything Alan loves, including his wife Alice. Alan demands Scratch show himself, and Scratch obliges, and causes Alan to once again get swallowed by darkness. He makes his way back to Emma, who is confused as she deals with vague memories of last time. She faintly remembers something bad happening to her, and went ahead and got all the items needed but the battery. Alan goes and retrieves it, and Emily charges it once more. He heads back to the oil derrick and sets things off. On his way back to Emma, he remembers this is when she got attacked. He fights off the Taken around her building, and Emma gives him the keys to the motel, as she already knows he needs them. Alan tells her to stay put and in the light. Emma agrees, but once Alan leaves, the door shuts again, and she is killed. Alan goes and gets the observatory key. Alan arrives at the observatory and picks up the imaging array from Rachel's car on the way there. He makes his way back to the buzzer, and Rachel tells him to go away before remembering from the previous encounter that he isn't Mr. Scratch. Baffled by this, she lets Alan in and tells him to put the imaging array in place, which he does. He tells Rachel not to start it as he has to turn the pressure valves. He does this and makes his way up to get the next part of the signal, which is still incomplete. Alan takes the printout and heads back to the theater. Alan arrives and grabs a key so he can restore the power. Once again, Mr. Scratch pops up multiple times to try and stop him with Taken. He turns the power on and fights his way back to the projector building. Alan has to do a couple more things now according to the script, but it still isn't enough. and he's once again in the field of darkness. Mr. Scratch once again taunts him in anger, saying he will never be able to escape. Alan wakes up in the canyon one last time. Alan goes to the oil derrick and sees that Emma has already set up all of the items he needs, and he once again activates them. He once more fights off the Taken around Emma's building. She tells him she won't give him the motel keys unless he stops the power from turning off, and thus saving him. He goes and stops the Taken from sabotaging the power, gets the keys, and then he gets the observatory key. Alan gets the observatory, and Rachel tells him she already has the imagery array in place. He just has to do the balance. He goes and deals with them and makes his way back. Rachel tells him that the signal is coming in loud and clear. Alan takes out the signal printout and makes his way back to the theater. This time Alan drives straight to the transformer yard so he can fix the power. Once again he fights through Taken as Scratch taunts him and makes his way to the projector booth. He puts everything in place now, having the final piece he needs. The film reel of a movie his wife made about him after his disappearance, named Sunrise. He puts it in the reel and it shines into Mr. Scratch, who was on a car in the parking lot. He slowly starts to burn away as he howls and says how he just had the balls to take and do what Alan never could. Scratch fades away and is replaced by Alan. Alice sees him and they hold each other and share a kiss. The narrator states that the events that just unfolded could just be Alan's imagination, since he is still trapped in the dark place. The credits roll and we see that Alan's episode of Night Springs was named Return. We then see Burry wake up in the motel room and call out for Alan. I think knowing the context of this game helped me a lot with measuring my expectations. If you go and look at the reviews of this game on Steam, you see a good bit of negative ones. A lot of complaining about the story and repetitive nature. I think some of that is fair. I knew the premise of American Nightmare, that it was Alan writing himself into an episode of Night Springs in order to try and escape the dark place, and that it did not work. I have some bias as well because I just started recently watching The Twilight Zone, and I've been really enjoying it. Just hearing the narrator doing that Rod Sterling speech mannerism instantly got me. I could also just imagine Alan sitting down and writing this slightly corny TV episode. This really just got me in the mindset to enjoy the game, alongside also knowing it's just 4 hours long. The story is definitely simple and repetitive, with the latter being somewhat intrinsic to its nature as a time loop story. What I don't understand is the people calling it too complex. It's rather simple in format, and if you played the original Alan Wake, you should be able to follow everything happening pretty easily. I believe a lot of confusion of this game's place in the series, and its differences from the first game, comes from the fact that it was released as part of 2012's Xbox Live Arcade House Party. It was essentially an annual release window where a new arcade game would come out every Wednesday for 4 weeks. Its existence as an arcade game is pretty clear, especially with the Horde mode it has alongside the story mode. I think going in with this knowledge about it helps a lot in how you receive it as the game after the first Alan Wake. I like the new characters we got in this game, particularly Mr. Scratch. The TVs that play live action bits of him taunting and talking to Alan in different ways. He's just overflowing with personality and mirrors the more reserved Alan perfectly, while also being an extension of the party boy reputation Vic had acquired in his professional career. He is as dramatic and mad as Wake can easily be, with a much more sinister edge to it. Mr. C in Twin Peaks was a emotionless machine, while Mr. Scratch is this Shakespearean-like villain who usually feels like an antagonist Wake himself would write up. The highlight of the game easily. Ika Vili and Matthew Peretta both knock it out the park, with the physical and voice acting. Of the other 3 new characters we got, I probably enjoyed Rachel the most and felt she had the most personality to her. I really enjoyed how she reacted to the time loop stuff as a scientist, and that she couldn't help but be fascinated in her talks with Alan about the moral implications of writing new realities. Emma is cool, but she feels like just a simple trope of cool female mechanic and not much more. Selena falls into a similar role of being used as a bit of levity with how she acts with the darkness in her brain. But I also enjoy the implications, conversation about that darkness and how she feels violated, alongside her and Alan bonding a bit over this. I went back to turn the power on in the second and third loops of her level, even though you don't need to in order to progress. I enjoyed the extra conversations, which added depth not just to her, but Alice as well, as we learn of their friendship and what she has been doing since Wake's disappearance. Overall, I enjoyed the new characters and interactions, but similarly to the first game, I wish we had more with them, and I hope I see them again in the future. The gameplay of American Nightmare is improved from the first game. It feels a lot smoother and more arcadey, which comes as no surprise given what it was released for. I think stuff like the flashlight balance was a lot better. It feels like they took some ideas from when the first game was originally meant to be open world. You had more open space in this game, and it made horde management a lot more forgiving than some of the sections in Alan Wake. You'll never have to worry about ammo in this game as it is everywhere. The first game really didn't have much survival horror elements to it, but it feels like they completely removed any that was in the game and leaned way more into the arcade shooter horror angle, which is much more to my particular taste. This game also added a good bit more enemy types with the splitters, spiders, giants, the enemies that can turn into a flock of birds, and the enemies that throw like reverse flashbangs that are bursts of darkness. This really added a good bit more variety to the game. I felt all added more to the dynamic besides the spiders, which felt like a nothing addition. I liked how the splitters played with the light dynamic and how you manage fights, and how the reverse flashbang enemy was a pure support enemy that would only throw them and was very weak to light. These two added the most to the fights, I think, and are the two I would like to see in Alan Wake 2 if I had to pick any. The gameplay is definitely repetitive, but with the gameplay adjustments this game makes and me knowing it was only 4 hours long, it never really got to me. The first game's gameplay felt like a chore, and even though you are doing mainly chore-like tasks in this game, the gameplay sections went a lot smoother for me. I would say it's definitely easier than the first game, so if you're someone who likes a good challenge, I would recommend playing on Nightmare difficulty. Similar to Quantum Break and the junction choices, I found myself respecting how the repetitive gameplay sections reflected the time loop narrative. I'm sure it would have grown old in a longer game. One last thing before I move on. The music in the game is great as usual. Quotes of the Fall always knock it out the park. Overall, as a small arcade game spin-off that has weird little place in the Alan Wake mythos, I really enjoyed it, and I cannot imagine continuing this series without it. The dynamic and live action bits of Mr. Scratch make this game worth it alone, and its full price is $8, which is more than worth the price. If you love Alan Wake and somehow have not played this one, do yourself a favor and pick it up. Enjoy a small little game night with a couple fun characters. This marks the end of the first episode of the RemedyVerse and my journey with Remedy Entertainment. This is my biggest project so far. I did not have much expectations going in, but I have already had such a good journey with it. Alan Wake has already cemented himself in my head as an all-time character, and I find myself repeating the "it's not a lake, it's an ocean" line in my head at least once a day. What started as a curiosity and a desire to experience a series of games from a studio that is celebrating 30 years now has evolved into me being a serious fan. Even Quantum Break, a game I have mixed feelings on, managed to earn my respect from what it was trying to do. I went into this blind, and now as a fellow creative I can't help but respect how they tie certain gameplay elements to their narrative themes and structures. I think it's the biggest takeaway from this episode and what I appreciate the most about them, alongside their storytelling. Sam Lake and everyone else at Remedy are some of the best in the industry, and I hope to get another 30 years under their belt. Gameplay-wise, I've been a bit on the fence, but I hear nothing but good things about almost all the other games I'm going to be getting to. And with the improvements in Alan Wake's American Nightmare, I have no worries about how I'll feel about the future game's gameplay. The next episode of RemedyVerse is going to be about Death Rally, the original and the remaster, and Max Payne 1 and 2, the games and series that started it all. I look forward to starting this next part of the journey. It's not a bone. It's a skeleton.